Today we will look at the possibilities of a conflict between India and China following the standoff on the boundary line between the two big powers of Asia, and how India would respond in a number of situations. Whether it will be just a territorial conflict left to the armies of the two countries, whether it would involve the Air Force, as was not the case in 1962, and whether the Indian Navy would respond as part of a larger strategic design in the Indian Ocean, working closely with navies of the United States and other Quad nations. Most importantly, we will explain to you that 2020 is not 1962 and how. Firstly, China made the incursions under the impression that the world's attention would be so divided with the COVID menace that nobody would come to India's support. In fact, this was the premise that guided Mao Zedong's initiative in 1962 when the world powers were busy grappling with the Cuban Missile Crisis. But this time, the story was different. One, India responded with alacrity and with such swiftness that it quickly saw Beijing and its military commanders appearing to be flat-footed. Beijing's military initiatives were also based on a certain confidence that it had picked up over the years, assuming that whatever salami slice or territorial incursions they would incur, India would only make diplomatic noises and put its forces on alert, but there would be very little coming out from New Delhi in terms of assertive responses that would limit China's options. This time, the assertiveness has been very high. The two examples of that is that the huge deployment of the Indian Air Force, other than troops being moved up with rapidly swift military deployment right across the LAC and the Sino-Indian boundary line ahead of Arunachal, the McMahon line. So the first Indian military response was so aggressive that China was a bit stumped. Then, how Indian troops responded to China's medieval, barbaric initiatives by using clubs, spears, and nails to hit Indian troops, the Indian Army units this time were not willing to be pushed around. And though they were instructed from Delhi that weapons will not be fired, every infantry battalion of the Indian Army has a Ghatak platoon. Quite literally translated, it means lethal. They are trained to kill without weapons. And quite clearly, these boys went out with Colonel Babu and others and avenged the death of Indian soldiers, many of whom were not just clubbed to death but pushed into the freezing Galwan River. But what followed was sheer ruthlessness that has shaken the Chinese army, because the Chinese army is made up still of conscripts who don't want to fight. They come from one-child families, they don't want to die, and on the contrary, Indian soldiers are looking to die because the respect they get in the country, the funerals they get, and the support their family gets from the Ministry of Defense and their state itself leaves every soldier wanting to become a martyr. So there's that one big difference. The second big difference is today's India's army is very highly trained, a hardened professional force that has been battling on the line of control with the Pakistanis for decades. It has fought the best terrorist efforts of Pakistan and brought them to a standstill in the Kashmir Valley. It has high altitude experience of the highest battlefield in the world, the Siachen Glacier, and is glorious after their victory in Kargil. So quite clearly, Leh, Ladakh and the adjoining areas on the LAC are home territory to our troops, unlike many Chinese troops who were moved in rapidly from the Tibetan plateau, and they are battling for oxygen there, whereas our troops are acclimatized and they're not battling for oxygen. The second big advantage that India has, that India doesn't have territorial ambitions. So it is the defender. It is not the attacker that China is and wants to be. And in mountains, the defender always has the advantage because he has to just hold on to mountain tops and defensive locations. And fortunately, our Indian Army this time is not surrounded by foolish commanders like they were in 1962, who made our troops take up positions in lower areas, nalas, riverbeds, valleys, where the Chinese could happily roll down. The third big advantage that Indian troops have is that we have to put in less numbers as against China, which has to put 5-6 times the number of our troops at every location to push our soldiers off. So classically, my estimate is that about 7 to 9 Indian divisions are deployed against China, both in the LAC and along the McMahon line. And for that, China needs to put together anything from 45 divisions to 55 divisions, which means each division being 7,500 men. So you can calculate 45 into 7,500, how much it becomes. An assessment of China's capabilities to rapidly deploy is that China could bring to bear against us about 36 divisions. So they need to muster up another 10 divisions, and if the threats against China are there in other boundary areas, and if China does away with its ambition to try and do a military aggression simultaneously at Taiwan, then China may be able to free that many units to attack Indian forces. They have advantages in rocket forces, but the other advantages that China has, the Indian forces clearly are far, far ahead of them, because one, the Indian Air Force is a first class, battle hardened and a very highly trained Air Force. The Chinese Air Force rarely does exercises with other international friends. It has very few friends anyway in the global power bloc. And the other thing is China boasts, amongst other things, of the J-20 Chengdu 5th generation fighter. It's actually not a 5th generation fighter, because the Sukhois of India have sighted the Chengdu from 2018 onwards doing air maneuvers, and you can't see a 5th generation fighter. So it's all clearly a 4++ generation, just like the Sukhoi and the Rafale are. And with those force multipliers, and with a highly trained force of other aircrafts like the Mirage and even the MiG-29s that we've gone and got back from the Russians now because of Mr. Rajnath Singh's recent visit there, our Air Force is not just capable of taking on the Chinese Air Force, but fighting a two-front war, which is a nightmare scenario that China thought we were up against because they built up the Pakistanis over these years to distract us. But Pakistan, we can handle in a defensive battle, and in the case of China, we can take the battle into their territory, which will put them really at a disadvantage. And the other aspect is also that China has to fly its aircrafts from the high Tibetan plateau, which means that the aircraft's ability to take off with full payload and full fuel load is limited and brought down by 40 to 50%. Our aircrafts will be flying from all air bases along the plains, whether it's Jammu, whether it's Bareilly, whether it's Tezpur and other air bases, and therefore they can fly with full payload and have that much greater range. Then comes the naval aspect. Now, could we use the Navy? My argument is that we should actually use the Navy first, because if you block Chinese shipping coming in from the Gulf area, going by the Straits of Malacca, where Malaysia, Singapore and other places are located, and on to China, and you block that, China will be short of fuel, it will be short of economic aid and materials, and it will get China to rethink. Also, the Indian Navy is operating very closely with the American Navy, and the US has said in the past that India's naval capabilities are up to NATO standards. And now, because of this integration that is taking place very quickly because of Quad, the naval battle will be taken away by the Indian forces well before China can bring to bear even its nuclear submarines. Now, the last two factors we need to understand. One is the enormous missile capability that India has recently projected. It has done 12 tests in rapid succession of 12 different variants of top-notch missiles. We have the BrahMos, which has been a nightmare for China for years. It has accuracy of 293 kilometers spot on onto a target. Vietnam wants it, South Korea wants it, China says don't buy it from India, and it's putting pressure on us through Russia, who was a joint manufacturer of the BrahMos. But now we've come up with other variants of missiles which are going to be the naval variants of the BrahMos missile, as well as the new standoff distance anti-tank missiles. That means helicopters can fire these missiles from a height about 8 to 10 kilometers away, and no anti-aircraft system can take them off the skyline, and these will damage not just Chinese mechanized and tank vehicles, but also their bunkers. And the other missile system that is lethal are the Prithvi missiles and the Agni missiles. Not that China doesn't have missile systems, but the big question that Beijing has to ask itself, is a few more kilometers of territory worth escalating the situation, which will draw in India's friends from the international community and lead to a world war-like situation? Or is Beijing now going to resort to, post the build-up, an unrestricted warfare approach, which means launch cyber attacks on India, launch cyber attacks on businesses and the economy, and try and influence public opinion through massive propaganda? That is a question that needs a separate discussion. But as of now, those of us who ask this question, that how will India respond to China in the event of any further military escalation, the answer is simple. China will learn it in a hard way that 2020 is not 1962.